Christian greetings. I hope you are well and prospering. I'm very excited about today's video. It will be a little bit of a slow video. Instead of just explaining something in a bunch of condensed details, I'm going to go through a practical class example. So you could probably just sort of watch and maybe take a little rest from your work and learn something as we construct couple business rule or our class project. Before we go into the actual class project, I'd like to describe a little bit about my setup so that when we get to using the things I have set up, I don't have to do a lot of explanation about it. I'm imagining I am at a college. First, I've created several accounts: a tuition income account, a dorm income account, and an academic fees account. Let's look at one of the student accounts. I only have 2 students created. It will be enough. And so over here I have the student Mac Tennyson created, and what I really want to point out to you is under analysis details, I have set up type. I'm using the type dimension to keep track of what country the student is from. So let's look at those analysis codes. We have the type, and remember how you set up analysis codes, you've got to clump them together with prefix. So over in the asset register, we use types to keep track of what type of asset we have, but also we're going to set up S's to keep track of what country the students are from. S is an arbitrary prefix. It could have been C or anything, but the point is that you keep things that are the same together by the prefix. And so if we hadn't used a prefix, the first thing on our list would be, I believe, the generator, and then the second thing would have been Indonesia, then Kenya, and then the laptop computers. And so all of this would have been hodgepodge together. But now we keep similar things together. They put a P in front of each of these plant assets, I guess. It doesn't matter what the letter is really. And I've got an S in front of all of the analysis codes clumped together for what country. And so we're using that to keep track of what country the student is from. And so I have another student here, a student called Tuembi Malbi, and I have the country he is from, and he is from Kenya. So you have that account code. These are account analysis codes over here that we're using to keep track of information about our accounts. So I have accounts set up with these analysis codes, and now this is one more fact I want you to be aware of. But in Sun Systems, let's just go over to Q&A. All else fails, I can always show things in Q&A. In Q&A, we have in the ledger, all right, I'm getting there, be patient, down here at the bottom, there's something called additional ledger descriptions, and you can see here that there are 25 ledger descriptions. These are fields that can be used for anything we want. And so it looks like Carl and his guys have used the first few, and so we'll drop down and use 11. These are fields that can have any value you want, and so they work a lot like the analysis codes that we know and love, like fund, function, restriction, and resource, details, but there's a distinct difference between the two types. The ones up here, the L's up here, are all validated fields. That is, if I'm typing in a function and I type in a department like Sabbath School and I put in SSSCHOOL, unless it matches the pre-set up code, it isn't going to go in. So it's a way to have very tidy data, and that someone has to put in the data exactly like the pre-set up code. And so we have these pre-set up codes here. These are validated in that the data has to go in matching these codes. Just anything typed into the field can't go in. It has to match the pre-set up codes. Well, on those at the bottom, these fields are not validated that way. Anything that can go in there, can be typed in. Well, that is good, and that you don't have to pre-set up the codes, but it's bad because you then can easily end up with just a big big chaos of mess. Sometimes somebody types in Sabbath School SSSCHOL and SCHSKOL and whatever someone types in. So normally we don't put data into these G fields directly by the user. Otherwise you end up with just whatever typing mistakes or whatever, because it would take it all. So those fields are populated by some mechanistic approach that makes sure that you have solid data in there. And you're going to see what I mean in a minute. It's some indirect way it gets populated with data that is validated or kept conformed to a standard from some other process. So it's not going in there directly from the user. We are going today use G11, G12, and G13, and I'm going to explain how we use them. And the beauty is we can populate from these fields without having set up the analysis codes first. So we'll come back to this screen later on. That was the pre-discussion that we needed to have, and so let's come back over to business rules, and we want to create a business rule. Let me give you the class example case that we're working with. At Mission College, we would debit student receivables and we'd credit tuition, or we would debit student receivables and credit dormitory, and debit dormitory revenue, and debit student receivables and credit other academic fees. Once we made the entry, there was a disconnect between what student produced those fees. So we would debit the student's account and credit tuition income, and without looking at the journal voucher itself, you wouldn't know where did that tuition come from. I don't need to go into a lot of detail, but managing the revenue was 90% of the job of being a vice president for finance. Revenue's got to be up, and where is it coming from and where is it going, and has everybody gotten billed that's supposed to get billed? And so what I had was a desire to tag my revenue item with the name and number of the student. So I could say, how much revenue did I get from Johnny? Or how much revenue did I get from students from the United States, or students from Indonesia, or students from Kenya? All of this was important. The college would be operating here in Thailand, and Indonesia would have a financial crisis. Well, I would know that my student revenue from Indonesia was under risk. And so what I needed was a way to tag the revenue from the debit to the student accounts receivable. I had to bring the information from student accounts receivable and tag it into the credit of tuition income. So now I could do analysis and summary and all of my Q&A stuff that way. Our first example is I'd like to show you how to directly bring data from line 1 of a journal entry into line 2 using a business rule. And so we're going to create a new business rule here. The event is going to be the end of line. This is the most powerful one. This is the one we've used almost all the way through. If you look under it, there's about 20, 30 rules, and you look under all the rest of these, there's about 20 or 30 rules. And so this is where all the action is business rules. So it's at the end of an entry line, not at the end of the entry, at the end of a line when we push the new line button. And we'll type in one here called demo of direct is enough, that's all it would have room for. Demo of direct interline moving of information. Okay, and then we'll go to the detail. I'm going to create one here. If in the first line the account, remember we want to move information from the first line of a journal entry to the second line. To be specific, I want to move the account number from the first line, debiting student accounts receivable, S. Tennyson, I want to move that to the general field 11. Remember me describing what that general field is? That's that unvalidated field down at the bottom. So I'll go click this, the account code. Now watch this. This is the whole point, so I'm not building up to it anymore. I go over function data hierarchy, and you can see I have previous journal line details. If the previous journal line detail, if the account code is equal to, now this account code is not the account code of the line I am working on, it is the account code of the previous previous line. Cool, huh? If the previous line account code was equal to S star 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 all the way across there. I don't know if you really need that many. If it is there, then what we want to do, we have to come here and say yes it is. We go okay. So if the account code in the first line of the journal entry starts with an S, then we will do another line and then we'll do an instruction set, and now we're going to say function data hierarchy. I just happen to know that those G's are under additional details, so I go okay, and we want to use general description 11. Okay, remember that we saw the first 10 or so were already used, and so I go general description 11. I want to set general description 11, and we want to set it equal to the function data hierarchy, and this is previous line detail. So this is not the account code of line 2, this is the account code of line 1, and so I go okay. Go ahead and finish this up. We put the X there, it's required. So we finished our business rule here, where it's basically saying if the account code in the previous line is equal to something that starts with an S, then in the second line set general description 11 equal to the account code from the previous line. So the rule is all set, and now let's test it. Okay, so we exit out of there and we exit out of the rule here, and let's just go quickly and do a ledger entry and see it working. And so the first one is S. Tennyson. Let me pull that down. So we're debiting S. Tennyson's account, and $1,000 we're billing to S. Tennyson and his tuition, and we go okay, new line. The account starts with an S, and so we're evoking the rule. Go to a new line. Now we're on the second line, and now we're doing tuition income. So we have tuition income 621101. Need to keep that in mind, and the resource is just anything here. A UF non-tithe, okay, and the function is general institution would work just fine for me, and the restriction is 0, unrestricted, and we're good to go. And that's 1,000, and that's going to be a credit. And we do post. Let's look over here at Q&A again. All right, we're in Q&A just to show you that we're getting some data there and that it worked. And so we'll take, that was journal number 852 in case you're curious. And so we'll come over here and we'll do a new query, and we'll do a summary report, and ADA, and table will be ledger. Account code is, I think I'll just do all account codes, sort of demonstrate the point here. Accounting period, and I'm going to just put down for all of them. And this is a summary report, and so the data I am going to put out is all the way down here at the bottom, my additional field references, those unvalidated fields I told you about, L1, and this is 11. Okay, this would be the account number, so we will put that over here on the side. We want the G11 code and the base amount, and let's just run it and see what we get here. And what we should see is just that one line from that one transaction. Right here, that's 1,000 we just did. This other stuff is garbage from previous experimentation. So there's the $1,000 coming in from that journal entry we just wrote. It was specified just to show you, don't know what I'm talking about. We got the journal number and the journal line, and remember that was 852. All right, so there's 852 line 2, so that this value, G11 value, picked up this account number in line 2, but it picked up the account number from line 1. So that showed you that business rule just working peachy keen using the previous line journal detail. So now let's go ahead and do another rule. We're going to go into more complex. Let me show you why we've got to do the more complex. You say, oh, that looked pretty slick right there. So I'm going to go back to the rule we just created and open it back up and show you why we want to do something more complex. I used the account code, and I predetermined my example by practicing. The best I could do was put the account code in general description 11. Now we want to focus on general description 11. That is the field very similar to fund, function, restriction, who, base amount. It's a transaction field, and in a minute we're going to have something that sounds very similar to that description, and I don't want you to get confused. And so the general descriptions 1 through 25 are just fields in the ledger like any other field that we're used to. Account number, asset code, every other type of field. So this is a field there. Now in this example, I intentionally chose to bring the account code over. And there's a reason why, and let me just show it to you right here. So this account code right here is what populated this number here. I'm on row 2 of this business rule. And let me just show you. So we went over here to function data hierarchy, and I got previous journal line details. And when you look in there, you will see that there's some pretty good stuff that you can bring from the previous journal line to the second journal line, but it is only bringing data from the ledger import screen 1, row 1. You're not able to bring in any static data using this methodology of the previous line, bringing it in directly. So I couldn't bring in the account name. Suppose I wanted to populate a field with the account name instead of the account code. It's not over there. And none of those account analysis codes are over here. I couldn't bring in the country. There's a good many things I can bring from line 1 to line 2 using this methodology, but no static data. And so what I want to do is teach you now how to move data the indirect way. This was the direct way. What we did is that we just referenced the previous line grouping of data. Now we're going to do it indirectly. The indirect method is probably going to be the most valuable for you because you can move anything that way. We're going to do another rule set. It's still going to be the end of line, and this one will be the indirect moving of data between lines. So we want to write the details of the business rule about indirect moving of data between JV lines, and we come over here and we create. First line is if. All business rules start with an if at the very beginning. And if the account code, and this is the first line of the JV, if the first line, journal line details, and if the account code is equal to, if the account code is equal to SSSS, yes, we go, okay. I'd like to use this opportunity right now to show you a very important principle in rules. In fact, if you don't understand this, you think the software is broken or that you are very confused. And neither one is true. The software is not broken and you are not confused. So let me put another if in here. And this is just a temporary. In a minute, we are going to change that to something else. But now, if I do an if, I'd like you to notice that I have in my function data hierarchy here, previous journal line details and related static data there. That is, I can do a logical if statement that looks at the previous line information and applies it to the business rule, or I can use some conditions in static data that are to be part of my if. If it's from the USA, if the account analysis is equal to USA, do so and so. And all of these fields are empowered and work in an if statement. In a set statement, these fields, if you think about it, the prior line data should not be able to be changed in a set statement, and static data should not be able to be changed in this ledger entry or business rule. So remember that with a set statement, anything that is in here is assigned the value that's over here. If it has to do with the line of the journal entry, it's fine, but we shouldn't be able to change the previous line information, and we shouldn't be able to change static data. So when you get to set statements, the data over here behaves differently. Let's just show you what I mean. Right away, we could see that static data doesn't even appear. You can't set static data with a set statement in the ledger entry. It's not going to let you change the account name in the middle of a journal entry. And also, the previous journal line details, even though they show up here, they won't let you put it into a set statement. See, I'm clicking OK there and it just acts like it's broken. So the reason is it's logically keeping me from using the previous line details in a set statement. It's important that you can't change a previous line details in a business rule that's looking at the second line. My point is in a set statement, the data acts differently because it only lets you mess with the stuff that you're allowed to change. So what we are allowed to change here is workspaces, and that's what we need right now. And remember the workspaces, we've had a whole class on that. And let's just take General Workspace 11. General Workspace 11 is just simply a holding place to hold information in our business rules. It is like the memory button on your calculator where we're able to hold information in a business rule. Just store it. This is not the ledger. This is just simply a memory space. And so we go OK, and we don't have an operator here. And then what we want is General Workspace 11 to be equal to function data hierarchy. And you see now static data is showing up. Let's put journal account details here, and let's put the account code. This is line 1, and so this is taking the account code, the S account code, and assigning it to General Workspace 11. And so we'll go OK, and we'll put X there because all action statements need an X, and we go OK like that. And then we'll create another one, and this is very repetitive here now. Set, and we want to use General Workspace 12. Now remember, these are just short-term memory, and we will set that to the account name. So here's function data hierarchy, and if we go right under here with related static data, I actually think it appears a couple places, but we'll just use this one, account details, and then description. Then we go OK, and we put this right here for X, and then we go one more, create another line, set, and then we're going to do General Workspace 13, just so we can keep it all straight. We go OK, and we want to put that equal to the country that is connected to the student, and that was under the type code. And so we do function data hierarchy, and we come down here to related static data and account details, and we go to account analysis dimension right up there at the top, and so we go there. Now I will tell you that it looks easier because it took me a while to work all of this out, to find it. You know, I make it look like it's real fast. I know where things are because I've already practiced this. But you just hunt around until you're able to find it. Use the mapping from the last video. So account analysis description, and I just happen to remember that that was account analysis code 6. So we're over here on chart of accounts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 type. OK, and I want 6 name. That's the name of the country that we want to put in that field. Go OK. Basically, what we've done on line 1, if it's a student account, we've stored the student code, the account code, description, and the country, analysis code 6, into these temporary holding places, and we're good to go. And so we go OK, and then we keep on rolling, and now we're going to line 2 of the data. I need my if statement up here. All the ifs have to be for the set. I'm putting my cursor right there, and I will insert, and it gives me room for more. So if I am now considering the second line of my JV, watch this. This is really cool. All right, I've got the function data hierarchy, and I'm saying if my previous account code, if my previous journal line account code is equal to, now watch, this is cool, S. Slightly confusing, but this row right here is for line 1. If the current account code is S, it's saying store this data in short-term memory. But if the previous account code is S, then do what's down here. And so we go right here to the end, and we create a new line, and we do sets. And so I'm going to do set. And now remember, under sets, I put all kinds of structure and confusion, but we don't have here static data that can be changed. And if we tried to change previous journal line details, it wouldn't let us. It gives us this blinking stuff. But I do have this other things, and I have journal line details. Took me a little bit to find all of this, but under additional details there, I have my general descriptions 11, 12, and 13. And I'm going to choose 11. And it looks a little confusing because they both have the word general here, but these are dramatically different things. The general workspaces are just short-term memory. General description is a field in the ledger with the same status as function, fund, base amount, account code, and so forth. It's just another field in the ledger, and so we'll set that equal to workspace 11. Workspace. And so what we're basically saying here is if the first line starts with this S, save it up in short-term memory, and if the second line starts with an S, retrieve it from short-term memory and put it into these fields in the ledger. And so let's just keep on going here, and it's very fast. Now we're just about done. We'll set general description 11. And the reason I use General Workspace 12 and I'm matching it is just so I can keep it straight. I have 12 in both of them just so I can keep straight what I'm doing. There's no reason to use the same numbered. Before we leave it, I'm sure you're straight on it, but let's just review it quickly. If it starts with an S, if the entry account starts with an S, this is storing up the account code description and the analysis code in the short-term memory. If the previous line of account code started with an S, it is retrieving it from memory here, taking it out of short-term memory and putting it into these ledger fields. And so I think we're done with that, and we can take a shot to see if it worked. I think what I need to do here is to keep things from going crazy and also to have a really fair test is I need to just for 1 second here. These are the two we just made, the demo of direct and the indirect. Now this temp and test here were ones that I created earlier, so I'm going to come over here and amend it to being suspended. They're not working. And so I've cut off all the rules relative to starting with S except for the one that we just created. So now we go back over to our ledger entry screen, and remember the way I understand it is that a rule doesn't take effect until you reopen a ledger entry. So if you had it open from previous reasons, you did a business rule, then a business rule wouldn't be in effect until you close it and reopen it. So this is demo here. We're going to do several of these, so you just have to be patient. So we do S, Tennyson. I go to new line. What should be happening when I hit S is it puts the account code, the account name, and the country all in short-term memory. We don't see anything happening, but we go to new line, tuition. See, it'd be a very easy matter to write business rules that are populating all this, because once you know it's tuition, all the rest of this stuff is automatically determined. And this is credit. And I think we can post, and then we'll do test 2, and we'll do Tennyson again for the dormitory 1000 debit, and we go new line. And now let's do the other student. One more. We've posted to 2 students to 2 different accounts. We come over here to Q&A and we can do some fancy report writing. We start with a summary report. Let's look at 6 to 7 ZZZZZ, and let's burst the sign and we go OK. So we have, this is G12. And we put up here G12, and this would be everything from A to Z, 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 something like that. So we're only picking up those that have a value. I can now drill down and extract my primary worksheet, and it's going to show me all of the revenue that has come from each of my students. And then I can drill down on that by G13, which is the country, the type that has been recorded on each of my revenue fields. And so we'll do G13 and we get it here, and we could see each country and the name of the students that were from each of the country and the revenue being made. Anything would be fine. So we could have this going here where G13 is what we put out first. So this would be the total revenue from each country, and if I wanted to do any of the other types of work that we do, we specify here, and I could drill down on G12, which was the name of the students, and we have a nice little tidy report now. This shows each of the students listed and the country they came from. And it doesn't have to stop there. You could start right here and drill down by account code. And we have the total revenue type, tuition, tuition income. It might have been better to drill down on account name. Might make a nicer, tidier looking report. Rent from students from Kenya, students from United States, and so forth. You get the idea. It works just the same as any of the other L7s. So I think that we're at the end of this sort of process. If you got a little bit confused about what we've done, we set, if the account code in ledger entry starts with an S, we save the account code name and the country of the student and this general workspace. If the previous account code, the previous line started with S, then in the current line we populated the general description fields and the ledger with these things that were temporarily saved in the workspace. Once they're in there, then they're available for analysis just like any other field like fund, function, resource, and now we have general description 1, 2, 3, and as many as we want. That is pretty much explained all. So thank you for your attention.